Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. This is the live office hours for the School of Sweet Georgia. My name is Felicia from Sweet Georgia and the School of Sweet Georgia. And we come here every month, the last Thursday of every month, to talk about all the things that have been happening inside the school. Now, every time I prepare for this session once a month, every month, I'm like, what am I going to talk about this month? Do we have anything to talk about? And as I was pulling together all of the information that we're going to share today, there's so much. This is way longer than I thought it was going to be. In any case, uh, lots of very wonderful things to share with you all. So I'm excited to see you all here, excited to see you guys all in the chat. And so, without further ado, let's get going with all the wonderful things. So, today, what we are going to talk about. I have some stuff that is kind of like top of mind stuff. It's really interesting. I actually got a number of questions this month. So that's great. So number of questions, number of things that have been kind of going on inside the school that we want to chat about as well. The latest updates. We always talk about the courses that are coming out. We always talk about all of that kind of content, upcoming events. We're going to talk about community forums. And also, as every month, we talk about all of the wonderful things that you guys have been making and creating. And it's so inspiring to see a lot of these projects. So I'm very, very excited to share these projects with you guys. So the first thing is all of the stuff that is kind of top of mind right now. There's a lot of things that kind of we've been talking about inside the forums, inside the Discord, lots of conversations about some of these things. And so one of the very first things that I wanted to mention was this idea of time blocking. Now, this kind of came about. We have talked about time and sort of managing time for multi-craft tool makers for a while now. But this past January, I think it was, Robin, one of our moderators inside the school, she wrote this whole blog post about how she manages her time and craft time and how she manages to carve out something like 25 plus hours of crafting time a week. Um, Even though she's extremely busy, she has like family. Robin's here in the chat. Robin's got family, she's got work, she's got volunteers, she's got lots of things that she's working on. And at the same time, she's still able to carve out quite a lot of time for crafting. And so that reminded me, oh, let's go back and have this conversation again. And so I created this little PDF calendar or schedule, weekly schedule. You can go to the discussion link there, and then you can actually download this PDF if you want to fill it in yourself and just kind of give it a try. But it's really interesting because we have been having these conversations inside our own Sweet Georgia team about, how we want to go about trying to fit more craft time in, making sure that we get craft time. We're doing a couple of different things. And it was really interesting because all of us, when we go in with this exercise in mind, we've realized that our perception of how much time we have um, can be very, very different from the reality of how much time we have. So when I did the exercise, and I talked about it on the last live stream for the Taking Back Friday, when I did the exercise, I come into this thinking, oh, I never have time to make things. I don't have enough time. And then at the end of the day, I realized, oh, I actually have like 18 hours of time to make things. Um, and then I think that Vicky, who is also one of the moderators in the school, if you go through that discussion thread, I think she also talks about how she came into this exercise feeling like she's making stuff all the time. But at the end of the day, she also came out with, I think, about 18 hours, I think it was. And so even though we have the same, maybe the number of hours, it's our perception as we approach it, how we feel about it. And so if we feel like everything is very scarce and there's not enough, then we're always going to feel sad. But if you feel like, wow, there's actually quite a lot of time, you're going to feel really positive about your making time. So that's one of the things that I encourage you guys to take a look at if you haven't already. The other thing is that us as a team at Sweet Georgia, many of us are trying this thing where we're going to do 15 minutes a day for 30 days. And we're all recording it in different ways. We're all using different kinds of tracking methods to do this. And we're all kind of looking at it with different goals. Some of us want to see different patterns. Some of us want to see like what other things in our lives affects our ability to do crafting every day. But we're trying this 15 minutes a day for 30 days experiment. We started on February the 15th and we're going to stop on March the 16th. And so it will be interesting to see what the results of that are. And I'm going to kind of go around and ask everybody what their experience was like trying to fit in 15 minutes a day every day. Um, the other thing here is this goes back to a point that we had talked about too, about like not matching your identity with the output that you make at the end of the day, how much stuff you have made. And so this is the same idea of like tying your identity to something that you do versus something that you value. So like identifying as a knitter can be tricky because things might change in your life that might prevent you from being able to knit. But if you identify as somebody who values creativity, somebody who values learning, somebody who values trying new things, somebody who values making things with your hands, that will never change. So it doesn't matter if you have like 5 hours to knit or 30 minutes to knit, like you're still going to be able to identify as this creative maker type person without having to do any actual knitting. So that's kind of some of the things that have been on my mind that I've been thinking about lately. The other thing that comes up from that is that it reminded me to go back to a lot of the courses and the workshops that we'd made previously about multi-craftual making. So there is the Epic Cloth course, which helps you sort of work through one big project by breaking it down into multiple steps, trying to figure out how much time you can spend and allocate to that project. There's also the Make Nine project. Make Nine workshop that was created by Tabitha, and so that leads you through the process of choosing 9 different projects that you might want to make through the whole year. And then again, how you go about doing all of that. And then finally, that multi-craftual maker workshop is all about how to look at your time, your resources, your space, your focus, how to collect your inspiration, how to just navigate this whole challenging world. So I encourage you to take a look at all of those courses. They are available on the school, and I feel like they could be very helpful. Tomorrow's Taking Back Friday video is actually all about organizing multi-craftual spaces using stations, and the idea of prioritizing materials and supplies and keeping them within arm's reach of whatever you happen to be doing. So that is going to be coming up on YouTube tomorrow at 6 o'clock in the morning Pacific Standard Time. I have a thread here that I want you guys to also take a look at if you would like. And this is one that was started off by Vicky. And so Vicky wrote this topic, new ideas for me for organizing multi-craftual spaces. And so she has also a number of photos of how she organizes her crafting areas inside her house as well. So I feel like all of these things have been really great to learn from other people, to learn different techniques, and just always open to seeing and how people organize their spaces for making so that it's efficient and enjoyable and productive and all of those wonderful things. Now, the other thing that has been coming up a couple of times, it's popped up a little bit on the Discord and it's popped up inside the school forums as well, is that now is the time. If you wanted to plant a natural dye garden, now might be the time to start getting seeds, starting seeds, all of that kind of stuff. I really look forward to seeing what everybody is going to grow this year. I believe this is a photograph of all of Vicky's seeds. There's a lot of coreopsis in there. I see some cosmos, marigold, Japanese indigo. Yes, it's time to get your seeds. So I have over the past couple of years also ordered from this same supplier, Grand Prismatic Seed Company, and yeah, this is a great way to get started. I planted a number of different seeds. I started all the seedlings last year, and then yeah, it was it was too hot, it was too dry, then it was too cold, and then they all died. And then I started again, and then they all died again. But if you would like to try that, I encourage you to take a look at Caitlin French's course. There's a course called Plant a Natural Dye Garden, and that is available here at this link. And you should check that out. And she shows the most inspiring, beautiful garden that she's created in containers outside her own front yard. So you don't need like big plots of land or anything like that. She's really working at this from a perspective of someone who wants to plant a garden but is limited by space, you know, limited by land, not having big plots of land or anything like that. And then she also started a community garden just like on the sidewalk near her in her neighborhood. And so that course I found was really fun to film, fun to learn from Caitlin. So if you haven't watched it before, I encourage you guys to take a look at that. And then, of course, there's all the classes that come out of the natural dyes, right? Like if you planted your own Japanese indigo this year, which is actually pretty easy to grow, um, depending on where you are. But if you grow all this indigo, then Caitlin also has a class teaching you how to use that fresh indigo and dye yarn and fabric from that natural indigo. There's also eco printing, where you can take the flowers from like the coreopsis or the marigold, how you dry them, maybe how you roll them up in mordanted fabric or mordanted yarn, and then how you dye all that. So lots and lots of things to do with natural dyes. If you want to, you can get started right now. This is a good time to start. Now for questions. So these are some dye questions. Louise, who I believe I saw you in the chat earlier, but Louise was asking some questions. She sent me some messages about when you're creating new colors, what do you use to test the dyes? Is it a certain size of mini skein? Is it just strands, or do you place drops onto paper towels? So this is a good question because we obviously create a lot of colors here. We do a lot of dye experimentation, things like that. When I test colors, because I am trying to be economical about the skeins that I use, about the resources, about saving yarn. I don't want to like just use tons and tons of yarn to try whatever I have ideas about. Yes, I mean, at a certain point, you're mixing dyes, and I'm going to mix colors, and maybe you do a drop on a paper towel just to see kind of what it looks like. But when I dye colors, I dye like in this photo here, where I have cut strands of yarn. So I take one skein of yarn, and then I cut through the middle of the skein to separate them out into individual strands. And each strand is going to be the same length. Then I might take something like 5 strands or 10 strands, depending on the thickness of the strands, and then I would weigh that amount. And then I would do all my calculations based on the weight of that fiber of 5 or 10 strands of cut yarn. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be able to do anything with that yarn afterwards. I have like all these colors dyed. There's going to be 5 strands of yarn or 10 strands of yarn. I would use those to wind them around like an embroidery bobbin or a piece of card so that I can save a library of these colors, but I'm not going to be able to make a mini skein out of them or whatever, or things like that. But I'm doing this in order to be very, very economical about using the yarn that we have available to dye. So that is one aspect of it. Now, this is a good starting point if you're just experimenting with a lot of different colors. You can do this very economically. The next thing that we do is sometimes we will make mini skeins. So you can see here, I have all of these mini skeins. These were all mini skeins that were dyed in preparation for the cabin colorways that we used for the double weave blanket for the course. And so these mini skeins look lovely and delicious. I mean, there's some really, really gorgeous stuff happening in these mini skeins. But then the trick is that when we use the same formula and then we upscale the amount of yarn in the pot to something like 4 skeins or 8 skeins, the color presents differently. The color binds to the yarn differently because of sort of the crowding that's happening with the number of skeins in the pot, all of these kinds of things. The dye doesn't get to move around to all of the aspects of the skein as easily, and so it just dyes and takes up dye differently. And so one of the things that we've had to learn to do is actually, when we now test colors for Sweet Georgia for our yarns, we dye larger batches for tests. So we're starting with, dyeing a few strands, maybe dyeing a skein or two, maybe dyeing a couple mini skeins or two. But then in order to really prepare for production purposes, and you guys can see this is like a very sneaky sneak peek of behind the scenes kind of photo, but this is all BFL and silk fine yarn. And you can see that we are testing colors for both the light shades that we've been doing, and then this is for autumn winter. These are the dark shades that we are going to be doing. But before we can put these into production and say, hey, we're going to make all these colors, we needed to dye at least 4 skeins of each color to make sure that the dye takes up properly, to make sure that it looks really strong, make sure that the color turns out the way that we expected, to make sure that there's enough difference between the medium tone and the dark tone and the light tone, that there's enough sort of dynamic range between the light and the dark. So we're testing for a number of things. So this idea of creating new colors, how do we test the dyes? it's a process. It's not just one thing. And so it's this idea like if you just dye this one beautiful one skein of yarn, if you want to extrapolate that to 4 skeins or 8 skeins, you might have to also do some tweaking in order to make it turn out the exact way that you want it to turn out. And so that is the challenging part, and that's the part that requires a lot more testing. So you can see if we're dyeing 4 skeins or 8 skeins of each color as a test, that's quite a lot of resources being used for testing. And so, yeah, it is a juggle and a balance, trying to figure out how much testing do we need to do just to confirm what we want to see, and then we can move forward. So that is questions from Louise. I hope that that answers your question. Louise had another question too, also about dyeing, because as you know, in February, we have been doing this Hold Along project. And so Hold Along has been about carrying two different yarns together at the same time to knit something. And so she was using this beautiful color, this kind of like red wine color, and then this super beautiful fuzzy silk mohair kind of yarn, carrying those two together. So, so pretty. But then she was saying that these colors are no longer available, and she would like to be able to reproduce them. She wants to be able to try knitting the two together, but not sure what she should use. And so I went and I looked at the ProChem website to see these are both colors of Sabraset or Lanaset. And so they are suggesting, well, I picked these swatches because they look most similar to the skeins that you already have. There's Magenta 385 and there's also Blush 386. I'm also thinking that the blush is a little bit warmer than maybe what you have here. But again, it's also very tricky to do these things based on screen photos, based on, yeah, photographs on the screen are always going to be very, very tricky to match. And so what I would probably do is I would dye a bunch of different samples of magenta, maybe magenta over dyed with a little bit of black in order to get that dark color, and then maybe blush with a little bit like a light version of blush, maybe mixing a little bit of magenta to add more cool to the blush. So there's a little bit of testing, but I feel like that's maybe a good starting point to work. Fantastic. And so if you want to follow along with that whole thread about what Louise is doing and the February hold along, you can go to the forums and check out that thread right there. Now, I had another question, which was about warp cross. And so Kim sent a message just asking, in weaving and winding a warp, what is the purpose of the cross? You know that when we are winding yarn on the warping board or on a warping mill, we're measuring out the length of yarn that is going to be put onto the loom. And so we want all of that to be nice and at the same tension. You want it all to be the same length. But in winding a warp, we always talk about the necessity of preserving the cross. Oh, the cross is so important. Maintain the cross. It's essential. And the whole point of the cross is so that you know which thread comes next. So if you wind a whole big, pile of yarn that's all the same length, that's great. But when you start to put it onto the loom, in order to prevent it from all getting tangled and all the warp threads crisscrossing each other and getting tangled and causing a big mess, we need to preserve the cross. The cross, you can see here, the cross is being held by these two lease sticks, and they are just holding it open, and you can see that the yarn will kind of go over one lease stick and under the next lease stick, and then the next thread will go under the first lease stick and over the second lease stick. And so it's forming that cross, so that way when you go to dress the loom, like I am here with this rigid heddle loom, I know exactly which thread to pick up. I'm not picking randomly from the pile of warp threads. I'm picking exactly the next one that appears on the lease sticks from the cross. And that's how I go about threading my loom. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that, this photo is actually from the Rigid Heddle Weaving Basics class. And so I show a number of different ways of warping the loom or dressing the loom for that one. And also we have a course called Essential Weaving. And so that goes into multiple ways of winding a warp. Yes, so hopefully that will be very, very helpful. But maintaining the cross, very, very important. Now, for the latest updates, we want to talk about very quickly. These are the courses that are coming up over the next few months. So, February, the Spinning Luxury Fibers in Silk with Rachel Smith. Those are Rachel's hands right there. Rachel's in the chat today too. Say hi, Rachel. Her class is available now on the school, and it is all about spinning different kinds of silk. I learned so much about different variations of silk that I've never seen before. There is airy silk, there's tussa silk, there's bombyx silk, there was peduncle, and just like so many different things. And then I'll show you a little bit later on. We do have a thread and a discussion about spinning silk hankies that comes up as well. But we do have, if you are interested in trying out some of these different silk fibers and trying your hand at spinning some of them or blending them together with other fibers, we do have spinning kits available on the Sweet Georgia website. And so just a reminder, all SOS members get a discount. So you can go find the discount in the resources section of the SOS site, and then there's a link that will take you to the Sweet Georgia site where you can go and get the supplies that you need for the spinning course. So yes, fantastic. So I think Greta has been spinning the kit. Um, yes, very, very excited to be able to offer that. Silk is so lovely, and the ability to blend silk with other fibers, other wool fibers that you already know and love is going to be really great. We have later this month, the Leah Learns Design is going to come out. So that's the final module about Leah, our video editor, learning how to design her own sweater from scratch. And so that's going to come out soon. We have next month, the first Wednesday of the month is going to be a Zoom lecture with Laura Fry on the full spectrum. And so that's going to cover all sorts of different aspects of designing cloth. So Laura Fry is a master weaver who has been coming to us once every other month to present a lecture, and it's very much about the nuances of weaving and creating cloth and making very intentional decisions about what you want your cloth to do, how you want it to behave, and then how you control that by changing different variables from your set to your fiber blend to your weave structure, so many different things. And so it is a lot of information that Laura shares, and then she also shows samples and examples throughout the lecture. So I encourage you guys to come to that if you can. Otherwise, it does get recorded and then we post it up in the school afterwards if you're not able to make it. We also have spinning with an e-spinner, which is there's been like a burst of popularity and conversations about e-spinning lately, I feel like, and people very interested in learning more about e-spinners. Maybe it's the EEW6, maybe there was like a promo about that, I don't know, but there's been just lots of conversations about e-spinners and which e-spinner should I use and which e-spinner is your favorite. And so I'm really, really looking forward to that whole course coming out with Debbie Held, because we shot a segment with each one of these e-spinners. I think we had like 5 or 6 different e-spinners, and we tested them for how loud they were, how did they function, how did they feel, all sorts of things like that. And then we shot video of all of these so that we could compare them all. So really, really looking forward to sharing that all with you as well. Rachel's going to come back in April and do the camelids. And then we also have granny squares with Charlotte, and that's all coming soon too. Very excited. The e-spinner course has helped me so much. Excited for the new course. Thank you. Yes. So, other things, just a reminder that on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. PST, we've been sort of turning off the website for like an hour, half an hour, just a short bit so that we can do updates to the website. And so that way, hopefully, if you guys know that that sort of window of time for about an hour, shouldn't be longer than 2 hours, that little window of time, there might be a little bit of disruption, but we just want to schedule that so that you're not, midway through a video and then all of a sudden the website turns off because we're updating it and then you're like, oh, I can't get into the website. So in any case, Tuesday afternoons, that's when we've been doing a lot of the updates. I have been trying to organize a lot of the courses into now skill levels, because the idea is that I don't know how many spinning classes we have, like 20 or something like that. So if you came into the school for the very first time and you looked at the spinning page and looked at all the spinning classes, you would be like, where do I start? And so we have sort of started to break these out so that way you can see these are the fundamental courses that you should start with. And then after that, go into the intermediate classes and then go on to the advanced classes. And so we're starting to do this with the spinning classes. And I'm going to move through each one of the categories and make sure that each category is complete, sort of from beginner to advanced with content at all different levels. The other reminder is that a lot of these Zoom workshops, like we mentioned, the e-spinner workshop, and there was a tapestry workshop that we did with Jana. We did some of those during the pandemic where we were planning to film in person, but then we had to readjust and film over Zoom. And so we refilmed those classes, like we remade them in person after we were able to travel and everything like that. And so those original Zoom workshops, rather than just kind of deleting them or removing them from the site, we decided to move them under the new courses as a lesson. So you can refer to that as well. It might feel like repeated information because it's kind of a remake, but if you would like to see that original content, it is still going to be there. We're not going to remove it or anything like that. Yes. So I hope that that is helpful. That's basically what we have been working on throughout the site, just kind of going through each category, and we're going to organize it so that everybody will be able to find the classes they need a little bit easier. The other thing is that we have a project photo gallery function that I think I need to open access to for everybody. But just in any case, this is here and it has been updated and it's behind the scenes. This is kind of what it can look like. We're going to give some more instruction on how to use it, how to create your own photo albums, all of these kinds of things. But one of the things that I thought could be really, really interesting to everybody is that with these photos, you can actually see very detailed, if you would like, if your photo has this information. You can see the very detailed EXIF information for each photograph. So you can see there's this photo that I posted here of some overshot samples on my loom. And then it can actually say, you know, what camera I shot it with. It shows that I used a 24 millimeter focal length for that particular shot. My exposure time is 1/125th of a second. My aperture was f4.0, and I used an ISO of 800. And so this is something that I encourage you to take a look at actually in the gallery. I think that this part of it is actually very interesting and helpful because if you want to learn to take better yarn photographs, I can definitely direct you to this course that we have called Yarnography. And it's all about understanding how cameras work and the combination of apertures and ISO and shutter speed and all of that kind of stuff. It's very fundamental photography information. But in like practical terms, sometimes it's really helpful to look at a photo and say, I like that photo. I want to be able to shoot photos like that photo. Then I need to know what are the settings that I should use in order to get to that photo. So if you know the settings, then it can kind of be a little bit of a shortcut towards getting to the photos that you want. So I think that that's kind of a neat feature about the gallery that I hope that we'll explore a little bit more. But if you haven't watched the yarnography class, I encourage you guys to check that out as well. Finally, upcoming events. So last month we actually updated the software for the calendars, and it changed the format and the arrangement of all of the events. So the events calendar, you can see it used to look like this, and you can still get to this view, but now it kind of looks like this. And so it gives kind of an overview of all of the events that are happening during the month of, say, March. So March, you can see here's the live lecture with Laura. We're doing Taking Back Friday live stream. We have live office hours. And then we have a bunch of knitting meetups with Robin on March 6th and March 20th. And then there's one on Saturdays, Weave and Spin with Vicky. You can also see here, there's this new feature where it will tell you that it is actually on Zoom. Oh, this one should say it's on Zoom too. But this one is on Zoom, and then these ones happen to be on YouTube. And then if you click through to these events, it will actually give you a link to click through to watch the actual event. So hopefully this is an improvement on what we've had for our events and our calendar and all sorts of things like that. But if you do want to use the previous layout, it is still available. You just have to click this button here that makes it look like a monthly calendar. There's also a weekly version and a daily version. And then the parallel lines, that is the overview, which I just showed you. But if you want this original format, that is with this little button here. So those are the events that are coming up next. On the forum side, we have, just as a reminder, we have these community forums where we have long, good, in-depth discussions about what we're learning inside the school, what we're making, all of our sort of the things that we've learned from the courses and what we're doing with that. All of those really in-depth and deep conversations are happening inside the community. And so both Robin and Vicky, who are here on the chat, they are both present inside the community forums every day and answering questions for everyone. So that is the link to the community. I mentioned last month that we also did start a Discord chat, okay? And so Discord is kind of, it's a different software. It's a app that you can get on your phone. It's an app that you can get on your desktop computer. You can get on an iPad, and it allows for more chat. It's a little bit more casual. It's less in depth. And you can see, like, you can definitely join any one of these sort of text channels and chat about things that you're interested in. Now, if you want to join the community on Discord, there's the link here, sweetgeorgiayarns.com/Discord. If you are, it is actually open to everyone. So it is not only open to SOS members. So you can see anybody who's here in gray, they are not necessarily SOS members. If you would like, you can connect your SOS membership to your Discord account, and it assigns you this role, SOS member role, and then it will highlight you in orange, and then we'll be able to see, oh, you're also in the school, that sort of thing. If you want to learn more about how to join the Discord, how it works, how to use it, Tabitha wrote this fantastic post that's down here, how to join the Sweet Georgia Discord server, explaining a little bit more about all of that. Now, about the Discord, I did receive a message from Linda asking me. She says, I joined the Sweet Georgia Discord platform, and I was wondering how you like it and what your vision is for this platform. Personally, I like SOS because the moderators do a fabulous job of replying to conversations and or passing questions to others. And the members post detailed descriptions of their projects and questions. So yes, absolutely, Linda. So I envision these things as two separate things, two separate areas for conversation. I do believe that the SOS forums, the SOS community is there. It's always going to be there to support members of the school, people who are learning, people who are actively learning new techniques and all these kinds of things, working on projects from within the SOS. I think that's very, very important. I think it's very important that we have Vicky and Robin there to answer questions, to be present, to be responsive. All of that stuff is extremely important, and that is all to support the SOS members. The Sweet Georgia Discord platform is meant to be a little bit more open to people who are not in necessarily the school, but it's meant to just sort of support more casual chat about things. We're not teaching anything in the Discord, and for the most part, the instructors for SOS are not in the Discord server, or if they're there, they're kind of like hanging out. But they're not there to do any teaching or anything like that. And so it's kind of two pretty separate things. The other thing is that because for a lot of the Sweet Georgia activities that we have, like we have make-alongs and things like that, they're not really SOS events or projects. And so it always felt a little bit weird trying to put the Sweet Georgia make-alongs inside the school when they weren't necessarily related to the school. And so having this separate platform gives people much more of like a free and casual space to hang out and chat about those kinds of things. And so that's what those things are. They're very separate. One is like Sweet Georgia Discord chat, and then the other one's going to be for the school and always going to be very dedicated to supporting members inside the school. So that won't change. So if you prefer to spend all your time in the SOS forums, totally go ahead and do that. You don't have to do both at all. So I hope that that helps answer the question. But feel free to like message me or email me if you have more questions about that. The Discord has been an experiment, and so we're just kind of seeing how it's all working as well. So let's look at the things you guys have been doing, because there's amazing things. The first thing I want to share is from Shuin. I don't know if you guys have gone to, I had to change the format of the slide in order to fit in all of the beautiful photos. But you can go to this thread, and it is about the Advent spinning fiber. So this year at Sweet Georgia, this past year, was the first year we'd ever made a spinning fiber Advent calendar. And so Shuin has here divided all of the fiber into two different color bundles. So she took all of the tealy kind of colors and put them in one pile, and then she took all the pinky, purpley colors and put them in a different pile. And then she used a blending board to blend them into bats. And then she added, you can see here, she added some Angelina, and then she spun them all using a drop spindle. This is the Shacked drop spindle. And then after that, she just plied it again using the drop spindle with some cotton yarn to make this textured, coiled, beautifully textured yarn. And so all of this yarn was made on a drop spindle. It's absolutely fantastic. Um, so I really, really admire all of the work that's gone into this. Like, it's beautiful. You have to come and take a look at the thread because there's so many other photos that Shuin posted that are really, really lovely. And just taking all of these colors and blending them and then spinning them, you can see what the chunky single looks like. You can see what all of the fiber looked like plied on this drop spindle. Lots of fantastic things. So it's beautiful spinning. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. The next one is, this is Vicky's spinning. So Vicky's also used the advent calendar, and she did something different where she took every color or every advent day and then she blended it all with Cordale in order to extend the yardage, and she said to give more unity to my final yarns. Trouble is that blending was a little bit tricky because some of the breeds have different staple lengths. So some of them have shorter fibers and some of them have longer fibers. And so trying to mix the Corriedale with all of these different fibers was challenging. And then also spinning them, I think, is also like a little bit of a challenge where if you spin a fiber blend that has very, very short staple length fibers, those short ones will come out and then you're left with all the other fibers. And so it's tricky to spin, tricky to card, but she's done this beautiful, fantastic job of blending them all together. And so she says she has Cordale, BFL, Shetland, Kent Romney, Rambouillet, BFL in silk, Polworth in silk, and BFL in mohair. So you can follow that thread there as well. Now, as I thought about this, I thought about like the amount of knowledge and skill and experience that would need to go into being able to produce something like this, because it's not only spinning, it is also working with blending tools in order to create these blends. So I was thinking about the courses that we had done in the past with Debbie Held. She did the blending board class to make Rolags, and then we'd also had Diana Twist come in to do color and fiber play 2. And she'd done a couple of these blending workshops to blend different colors. The idea is to extend your yardage, to extend your yarn, to almost like change the quality of your fiber and your yarn as well by adding in different fibers, different wool fibers. So there's a little bit about that. And then there's also going to be a bit of an understanding of what all of these sheep breeds do and how they behave, how the wool is different. Like, how is Romney different from Corriedale, different from Charolais? So all of that requires quite a bit of learning and understanding. And so if you haven't taken a look at it yet, the blending board class, color and fiber play classes, and also Rachel's spinning sheep breeds classes could be very, very helpful. A lot of these ideas for the fibers that were in the advent calendar came out of the course with Rachel about sheep breeds. So spinning Shetland, how do you spin Shetland? How do you spin Charolais, how do you spin Corriedale? All of these kinds of things. Those are all topics that we talked about in that class. So beautiful, beautiful work, Vicky. Always love seeing what you're making. You also have a photo here from Pearl. So Pearl finished her double weave bags. These are the bread bags that we used inside the double weave class. So the double weave class link is right there. But she made these double weave bags using 8-2 cotton and on a table loom. So we used Duet at the studio, just Duet, which is probably a little bit thinner than the 8-2 cotton. So the 8-2 cotton, she said, it was woven to be very airy. So usually a recommended ends per inch is about 20, sometimes 18 for 8-2 cotton, but she wove this at 12 EPI. So this is very like gauzy, airy kind of bag, but it looks beautiful. It looks like it's very, very drapey. And it looks very like evenly even beat because all of these little log cabin sections look so nice and checkerboard and even. Like it just looks really nice and consistent. So it's a really, really lovely job, Pearl. Yeah, they turned out amazing. Denise is a new member who joined us recently, and she posted a photo here of two scarves that she made using sock yarn in a kind of lace pattern, she says, with pickup sticks on a 16-inch rigid head loom. And it was fun and easier than it looks. So if you want to say hello to Denise, you can go to this. This is her welcome message. Hello from Seattle. And I thought that these were so, so pretty. Watching Amanda Wood weave lace with the pickup sticks on the rigid head loom is mesmerizing. It's quite amazing. And so if this is something that you've never tried before, I have actually never tried this before either, is to like warp up a rigid head loom and then use a pickup stick either on the front or behind the reed to create different patterns so that you can create some of this texture. This is the class that I encourage you guys to take a look at. So these are Denise's scarves. I'm not sure exactly what pattern she used because this is her own project. This is not from the course, but they are very, very lovely. Now, this is another one here. This is Dale's weaving. This is, again, texture on the rigid head loom. So you can see there's these floats here. These are weft floats. And then there's also these warp floats here. They're very tiny. You can barely see them. But the colors used here are so fun. And the stripes are asymmetrical. There's just like a lot of play happening here. And then also with the texture that's been laid on top, it's going to be really, really fun. But again, this is technique that you would learn from the lace with pickup sticks on rigid hello class. And I have more. I have another one. So Lauren also wove a bunch of samples. These ones are in the 3-tube Just Beam, the cotton yarn. And she said, it was fine to work with. I've decided to make placemats for the larger project, continuing from the sample. So like looking at all of the samples that she's woven, you can pick, oh, which one looks good? Which one would I want to use for placemats? And then extrapolate that and make a larger project. So she followed up and she said that this was woven at 10 ends per inch. You can follow the thread here about the lace with pickup sticks, and then that's the course link as well. I explored a few alternate pickup patterns. I tried the 5-1 lace pattern with 1 up, 1 down. I also tried 2 pickup patterns with 4 up, 2 down. Lots of things to lots of things to experiment with here. Yeah, it's just such an interesting way of being able to take your rigid head loom, which I think sometimes people think, oh, the only thing I can do is weave plain weave on it because you know it's a rigid heddle. There's so many things that you can do to change what your rigid heddle loom can do. So it's just more to explore. So fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing those, you guys. I like this photo. So this is Juliet. Juliet took her silk spinning to the Irish pub. And so you can see she's got her little e-spinner here. I believe this one is the Dreaming Robots EEW6 is, I believe. Looks like that one. But she's taken her e-spinner to the pub to spin this 100% Tassa silk roving here. She says it's been dyed and she's doing short forward draw. And she says, loving the spinning luxury fibers class with Rachel Smith. So there you go. And then, so this whole thread, if you follow this thread, this goes on to a big, long, in-depth conversation with Rachel about how to prepare and spin silk hankies as well. And so Rachel was really great and added a number of photos of what it looks like to take a silk hanky and pull it apart and prepare it and then spin it to like attenuate it, how to attenuate it in order to spin it into yarn. But this is looking really lovely. Spinning silk is one of my most favorite things. It just feels amazing. A number of people were also talking about how at this time of the year, because your hands are so dry, they feel a little bit like Velcro and the silk fiber just sticks to your hands. And so Vicky made a really, really great suggestion about making sure that you sort of moisturize your hands about an hour before you're going to go and spin so that your hands will be a little bit softer and then you're not going to catch on all that silk fiber as you go. But that looks like a wonderful way to spend an evening. Also have here, this is Anne. Anne in the school. She said that her New Year's resolution this year was to revisit weaving, which she hasn't done in decades. And so she picked up the Shacked 15-inch Cricut loom, and she started with the Rigid Heddle Weaving Basics class and made this lovely scarf. It looks so warm. She said it was warped with sock yarn, and the weft was a merino single that was plied with mohair silk lace yarn. So that looks really cozy and warm. She said she made a newbie mistake of warping the loom backwards, but caught it before she started any weaving. I have done that as well. I think I might have done it while I was filming that class. I might have accidentally almost warped it backwards. And that happens. But it turned out beautiful. So fantastic. Congratulations on your first scarf. So I have here, this is Andrea. Andrea has been like, if you go back to last month, Andrea was preparing so many things for a guild show, so many things for presentations, and she continues to just inspire and just amaze me with all of the things that she's working on and creating. And you can follow her learning plan. The link is here. You can see her progress. But every month she records like what she's wanting to do. And then like a few days later, she'll be like, yeah, I did it. It's amazing. It's great. So I encourage you to follow along with what Andrea has been making. And so she has this kitty hat. This is the alpaca scarf shawl that she was working on. And then if you don't already have a learning plan, I sort of encourage you to take a look at this link as well. And it's about how do you create your own learning plan in the forums, and think about how often you would come and revisit what you're planning to do. Many people I can see in the chat here, I've read their learning plans. Lots of people writing down what they want to do, and then being able to follow up and say, oh yeah, I wanted to do that last month. Where's my progress on that? What have I been doing? And so checking in, every couple of weeks or once a month is a really, really great thing to do. So that way you always feel like you're moving towards the things that you said you wanted to work on. And it's just, yeah, I'm here to remind you to go look at your learning plan every month. So congratulations. Really, really lovely work, Andrea. I have here Adriana's first sweater. This is great. So she also posted a link about learning how to design her own top-down sweaters. She was using the Ann Budd's top-down book, and she was also asking about if anybody has any resources or any suggestions for like books that would help you with learning to design your own thing. And then I followed along with this thread, and then 2 weeks later, she was like, "Look, here's my finished sweater." And so it was conversations about how she had used this yarn before to start a cardigan, and she didn't like how it was turning out. And so she wanted to frog it and then reuse the yarn, but the yarn was going to be all crinkly. And she was asking, well, what do I do with the yarn? How do I make it not crinkly before I go and work on the sweater? But yeah, the sweater looks amazing. And she said she did use Ann Budd's book for this sweater, but it's fantastic. It's really just fantastic. So just congratulations on the lovely sweater. Fits you beautifully. And if anybody else is interested in learning more about designing your own sweaters, I encourage you to take a look at the Leah Learns Design workshop, and then follow this thread here because there were some book suggestions in here as well. Fantastic. Congratulations. And finally, last but not least, we have Robin's Granny Cocoon. So I'm so excited to see this done. Robin said that she was inspired by me crocheting this thing a while ago, and mine is here. But mine is still like a square, and I didn't finish any of the edges. And so I'm so proud to see that Robin finished it completely to the point where you can actually wear it. It looks fantastic. This was made with Manos. I love the colorway. It's super fun. And you can follow, this is Robin's learning plan. This is what she's doing for 2023, all of the things that she's working on. And I noticed that we actually have quite a number of crochet classes now in the school. We have at least 3, and there's one more coming in April. They're all taught by Charlotte. And so it just goes from everything from the very beginning of like how to choose a crochet hook, how to hold a crochet hook, how to do a chain stitch, how to do increases, how to do decreases, all that kind of stuff. This granny cocoon is obviously based on a granny square. It's basically just one giant granny square. And so that's also very, very easy to do. And we have that Granny Square class that's coming up in April. So I hope you guys will join us for that. But if you've ever wanted to try crochet, we can help you with that. We can definitely help you with that. So we have a link here to the survey that we do every month where we just ask a little bit about like what was helpful to you during this session, what was something that you would put into practice, if there's any feedback that you can give us about what we're doing or how we're doing things. I would love to hear about all of that. So you can go to that link, schoolofsweetgeorgia.com/live 2023 Feb, and then that will give you like the form where you can fill all of that stuff out. And what we're going to do is we have set this to stay open until Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then we'll close it off, and then we're going to pick a winner, and the winner will receive a $25 gift card for Sweet Georgia. So that is what we are going to do. Link, Greta has kindly posted the link in the chat. So thank you so much for that. And then this is my thank you. Thank you so much for being a part of the school. Thank you always for coming out to these sessions, for being in the chat, for just being here. I'm always so pleased to see how much positivity and how much encouragement happens inside the school, inside the forums, and just always happy to be here doing this and to sit here with you guys. So that is it for today. Thank you guys so much for being here. You feel free to add anything in the comments, in the chat, if you guys have questions, if there's anything else that I can help answer for you before we head out today. But it's lovely to see all of you guys here in the chat. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Wonderful. I will see you guys next month then. Bye.